Well, the next block is when we start increasing intensity. So we'll have relatively like a little bit less L3 and threshold training and a little bit more L4 and kind of race pace practice. So yeah, we're going to be doing shortening the intervals a bit and making them harder just to get the body ready for race season.
When you talk about increased intensity, like if you would give us a comparison, what normal week, right? Well, in the previous block was versus the week with increased intensity. What would be the main difference?
Yeah. Well, pretty standard during the summer. I was doing maybe like 2 sessions of L3 work. So we'd maybe have 45 to 60 minutes of on time in a kind of a comfortable threshold zone. And we do that twice a week. And then when we increase the intensity, it might look more like one of those sessions is like we might ease into it. Like the first half of the session is there's a little bit of L3, but there's um then the second half of the session is L4 or something. So an example would be like 20 minutes L3, 20 minutes L4 broken up into different intervals as opposed to 60 minutes of L3, if that makes sense. So
Mhm.
maybe like 2 sessions a week of intervals, but more of the on time is in a harder effort zone.
What would you suggest so people now going through a transition, for instance, from biking or pedal sports into cross country skiing and running? What would you recommend the best way kind of transition from those activities into uh, cross country skiing and like what maybe things to avoid, what to be careful about?
Yeah. I think incorporating a couple days a week of running is always going to be helpful fitness wise. And depending on how much you've been running, easing into that is always ideal. And I think if you have access to roller skis, that's probably the best direct preparation for skiing. But and I feel like there isn't too much you need to be careful about with roller skiing unless you're going from zero to a lot, because sometimes the elbows can get a little irritated from double pulling on pavement. So I think with any brand new activity, it's good to ease into it. But if your body allows, I would say the more roller ski and running activities you can get in, the better for ski season, because those are really great ways to prepare. And biking is also an awesome way to prepare for skiing. But yeah, the more specific, we tend to get a little more specific in our training in the fall, like more roller skiing and a little bit less running and biking the closer to ski season. But running with poles is also a really great specific prep workout. And yeah, maybe getting some good strength workouts in there to use some of the muscles that maybe you haven't used over the summer if roller skiing hasn't been an option.
And what do you think percentage wise, like going into the fall, let's say in September, in the next 4 weeks, percentage of the generic activities like running and biking versus more specific like roller skiing?
Hmm. Well, probably I mean, for me, I probably try to do half to three-fourths of my activities ski specific if I can. That's a little bit generic, but I like to do kind of a lot of roller skiing and running with poles because they just feel so directly relevant. And I feel like the best way to improve at something is just doing that thing as much as possible. And that's why people preach getting on snow, as much as possible, because it's just you can't beat that direct training. Um, so I guess I would aim for maybe three-fourths of my training to be ski specific as we near the season. But all the cross training things are great, and don't need to be eliminated by any means. Just, yeah.
And what about classic versus skate? Is it? What's the percentage of on either side?
Well, I think a good general rule to start with, if you like if you're just looking for some guideline, is to do 50-50, like just switch off every session. But I think if you know you have a weakness that you really want to work on, then by all means, it's good to favor that a little bit. Like if you want to get stronger in your upper body, then going out for a lot of double pulling is a good way to combat that. Or if you want to get better at skating, maybe you skate more. So I think 50-50 with a little emphasis on your weakness is a good rule.
Okay, well now I have a tricky question for you.
Uh-oh.
So some people probably live in the areas where there's kind of like flatland, not many hills. So what would you suggest in those situations if someone can work on the V1 on the techniques that actually need hills? If you
Mm.
have any ideas, V1 or diagonal stride for classic, any thoughts what people can do?
Well, some fun ideas to kind of simulate hills. One of them is a weight drag, which this is something I got from a coach in college where we would tie like a weight behind and connect it to a rope and tie it around our waist and run. And that kind of, simulates a hill in terms of resistance. Or you can also pull a tire if you're roller skiing, and that definitely makes it a lot harder. But that's if you want to get really crazy. Other ways, I think jumping in general, even if you have that's like if you have a really slight incline somewhere, that's a good way to make the most of hardly any elevation gain, is doing reps of like single leg jumps or double leg jumps, because you're getting that power practice and you don't need a lot of terrain for that. And you can also simulate skate jumping on hills like that. Um, yeah, let's see. V1, I think skate jumps are just a really good way to work on those muscles without having a lot of terrain for it. But I also think there's a lot of magic to just repeating what you do have, because you don't need to have never-ending hills. You maybe just need to have one little section, and maybe you repeat that a bunch of times. But if there's a treadmill in your area, that's another hack. Roller ski treadmill or running treadmill. Yeah, getting creative, because there are ways and there are athletes making it work in all types of locations. So thinking outside the box a little. I would just say that it's coming quicker than it seems. It kind of feels like some days still feel like summer, and depending on where you are, maybe it's cooling off a little, but it's right around the corner, and any prep you do now is going to help you big time. Some people say if you're not crying in the summer, you're crying in the winter. So
Oh,
it's never
okay.
too soon to get motivated.